It is currently 38 degrees outside, probably close to that in here, so I've chosen a really great day to make a YouTube video which requires me to turn off my air conditioning and my fan. But I'm going to try and make this one a quick one, mainly because I don't really remember much about the books because I read a lot of them quite a long time ago at this point. But anyway, as you can tell from the title of the video, this is my favourite books that I read in 2021. I have 9 on this list, but that's okay, a top 9 is fine. Before I get into the favourites, I just want to talk about the least favourite book that I read in 2021 because it was probably on a lot of people's top 10 lists, and I just want to reach out to anyone else who feels like me about this book. It is of course Beautiful World, Where Are You by Sally Rooney. I mean, the title itself annoys me. I thought it was absolute drivel. I thought the characters were so non-existent. They didn't seem to have any characteristics except being self-absorbed and wanting to have a lot of sex. They did nothing but vaguely muse about modern life as a late 20s, 30-year-old person living in the Western world, which would be something I'd be really into, except nothing they said was at all original, nothing was insightful. It honestly felt like the kind of things my friends and I might have said when we were at university, not the kind of things that these so-called very intelligent, smart, late 20-year-olds should be talking about. I blame the fact that I read 24 books last year, which is fine, but I blame it on this book because it took me so long to finish, and I was determined to finish it because I'm a Sally Rooney completist, and I loved her first 2 books. My theory is, though, is that Sally Rooney purposely wrote a bad book. There's a huge theme from the character Alice, who is clearly Sally Rooney's stand-in. She is a very famous novelist who's complaining a lot about now she is in the public eye, and she feels like as a writer that's a bad thing because she is not able to reflect on real life anymore because she's too famous and too wealthy, which I thought was actually the most interesting part and was really not investigated as much as it could have been. But it feels to me like Sally Rooney also feels that way and was really hoping that people would get off her back, that like this book would be terrible enough that people would stop anticipating her next novel so much. This is just my wild theories. I'm probably not correct at all. She probably thinks it's great, but that was the explanation that I could come up with at the time to make me feel better about the fact that I just read this whole thing that was just utter nonsense. So now that I've got that off my chest, let's get to the books that I actually enjoyed last year. These are not in any particular order. This is just the order in which they appear on my Goodreads challenge because that's how I went through and wrote them all down. So first we'll start with Passing by Nella Larsen. This is the novella that a recent film on Netflix is based on. I would definitely recommend the book over the film. The book was so much better, which is unfortunate. I thought the film had a lot of potential, but it's a very interior book and I don't think they were quite able to get the interiorness of it into a visual form. Instead, I just felt very distant from the film, whereas the book I felt so much in the mind of this main protagonist. Both of them are Black Americans able to pass for white. Claire is 100% passing for white all the time. She's married to a racist white man. And the main character, Irene, is living in the Black community in Harlem. The two of them are old friends but reconnect when they randomly bump into each other in a restaurant at a time when they are both passing for white. And reuniting with Claire just shakes Irene's world up in a number of different ways. I've never read a book about this topic before, and it's so fascinating to read something written during the 1920s as well that is about something like this. It's so short, but it's so powerful and impactful. Next on my list is Women vs. Hollywood by Helen O'Hara. Helen O'Hara is on the Empire podcast, which is a film podcast based off the British magazine about film. This is obviously about women in Hollywood. It talks about the history from the early invention of film, which actually was very female dominated at the beginning. That is until it started to become profitable, and then of course men started taking over. It's such a fascinating in-depth history. It's so interesting considering how much talk there is about getting women in creative roles behind the camera in film, and how it's almost like we went backwards during the last century and have to like work hard to get it at a point where it even was when film first started. If you're at all interested in the history of film, it's almost essential reading, really. Next on my list is Fake Accounts by Lauren Oyler. This was obviously such a hit last year, about an unnamed protagonist who finds out her boyfriend is secretly running a conspiracy theory Instagram. It's very hard to talk about the plot because there isn't really a plot as such. It's a lot of musings about being a young person on the internet. It's a lot of observations about New York and Berlin. The book is set in both of these cities. I found it very funny and witty and engaging, and it very much felt like a book of now. Next I have Life Among the Savages by Shirley Jackson. This is the first of her 2 memoirs, and I read a couple of her novels that I hadn't read before this year and found myself really not enjoying them, which is such a shame because I absolutely love We Have Always Lived in the Castle and The Haunting of Hill House. I just haven't enjoyed her other novels so much. They're just a bit too abstract for me. I don't quite understand what she's trying to say, but I absolutely adored her memoir. It's such a different style from her novels. It just is little vignettes of her life living with her husband and her children, all the amusing things that her children did, and sort of little insights into the struggle of managing a household while trying to be a writer, but it's not really about that at all. And we're certainly not getting anything that feels particularly personal, like a personal insight into why she wrote the novels that she did or how she felt about her husband, who was known to be not always the greatest guy. So don't expect anything like that, but it is still such a fun, different style from Shirley Jackson that is so totally different from her novels. Next I want to talk about The Pursuit of Love by Nancy Mitford. This is a copy that has 3 of the novels in that series. Love in a Cold Climate is the second novel, which I also read last year and enjoyed, but The Pursuit of Love is the absolute classic. It's where all the interesting stuff happens, and the rest of the books are just sort of adding to the whole story, but are not as good as the first one. It's narrated by Fanny, who as a child often stays with her cousins at Alconley. Linda is her favourite cousin, and it's about both of them growing up desperate to find husbands, but their lives go in very different directions because Linda is the flighty one who gets herself in all kinds of scrapes and gets married to all kinds of men, and Fanny is the sensible one who finds a Oxford professor husband and has children and lives in the countryside. And although Fanny is narrating it to be mainly about Linda, you get these little insights into Fanny's life and how, as much as she is the sensible one, there is this tinge of jealousy at Linda's life as well. It is one of those old books that is very feminist all on its own. What annoyed me about the TV series is it felt like it felt the need to amp up the feminism for a modern audience, whereas in its own way the book is discussing all kinds of themes about what it is to be a woman and be stuck in certain positions that society gives you. And I think it's because Nancy Mitford discusses these things with such a light touch that they can sort of go unnoticed amongst all the fun of everything, but they are 100% still there in the novel. I do think it's one of the classics that everyone should read at least once. Next on my list is Milkfed by Melissa Broder. This is a book that on the surface I wouldn't normally like. It is highly sexual, like so much sex happens in this book, and I usually find reading those scenes just boring because it becomes very repetitive. That was definitely the case in this book. It was quite repetitive in that respect, but the other aspects of it kind of made up for it for me. It's about a main character who is very alone in the world. She has a terrible relationship with her mother. She doesn't seem to have any friends, and she doesn't really like her job. And she copes with this by severely controlling what she eats, and very clearly has an eating disorder. And then she meets this woman working in the froyo place that she frequents, who doesn't watch what she eats in any way. And this main character finds this both terrifying and alarming and intriguing, and so the two become friends and then lovers. It really is all about the close connection between sexual desire and food desire as well. I just found it so engaging. I literally just sped read through the whole thing. It's sort of one of those books where I don't know whether I would recommend it to other people, but for me it's possibly the best book that I read last year. Next I have Ghosts by Dolly Alderton. I actually read this, Milkfed, and the book I'm going to talk next about all in a row, so I had such a great reading time during this period. This is another hit from last year about a woman who tries dating I think it was after a fairly long-term relationship, and she strikes up a relationship with this guy and then he ghosts her. I suppose it's just musings on modern dating life and what it's like to be a woman in your 30s who's single while everyone else around you is getting married or having children, and the isolation you can feel when you're at such different life stages from the people that you've been friends with up until that point. And while I'm not 30 yet, I can definitely relate to that. Most of my friends are in long-term relationships or have got married or are getting married in the future, and you can feel a bit of an outcast in that situation because the things that they talk about and think about in their day-to-day life aren't necessarily the same things that I think about because they have this other person to consider, whereas I don't. So yeah, it was sort of relatable, sort of not, because I didn't really relate to the main character at all, but I certainly related to her situation that she was in. And Dolly Alderton has a very engaging way of writing. I just enjoyed being in its world. The next book I actually read after that was Detransition Baby by Torrey. This is about two different characters, one who is transsexual and one who detransitioned, as the title would suggest, and the two of them used to be together. Now the person who's detransitioned is with a woman and wants to have a child and wants their ex to be involved with that as well. It's just so good to read about things by people who have lived experience, and I didn't just learn a lot. It really has everything you could want from a book. Yeah, just would recommend it. It was good. The last book I want to mention is If I Had Your Face by Frances Cha. This is about a group of women living in Korea, all with very different lives, but all living in the same apartment building. Most of them are all friends, apart from one who is a slightly older woman who is married. It really just is an insight into what it's like to be a Korean woman. It's also about the class system. A lot of these women feel trapped for various reasons, whether that's marriage or money situation or their jobs. And it also talks about the trend for plastic surgery, this obsession with having your face a certain way, and plastic surgery being seen as completely normal, not an extreme thing to do at all. The title comes from probably one of my favorite lines of a book I've read last year, if not ever, which is, "I would live your life so much better than you if I had your face," which is such a great line and like heavily relatable. The book does end on a really sweet note as well, which is nice because these characters do go through a lot throughout it. So fascinating, so interesting, and so well written. I'm repeating myself, but like that's the reason these books are on this list, is because they're all just good. So those are my favorites from last year. Let me know your favorite book from last year so I can add it to this year's TBR. Hopefully I'll see you in the near future. Until then, I hope you're all well and safe. Bye.